Cool. And yeah, just give it a try. Keep in mind we have 13 minutes, so no need to kind of draw anything out. But let me know if you have any questions.
Okay.
This is a real question that another one of my clients got, by the way.
Oh, really?
It was actually a take home, so it's a little more difficult, but yeah, let's see what you come up with.
Okay. Okay, what does EGP stand for?
It stands environmentally, no, EGP. Let's look that up actually. Epic Games. Epic Games Publishing announces blah 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 blah. Oh, Epic Game Publishing.
Oh, okay. Per title, the last report queries from the following with the title. Okay, so if I'm understanding this correctly, we want to create a table, and in this table, each row represents a sale, and each row will contain the title and platform for each row, right? So for example, PlayStation video game, Xbox video game name, right?
Correct. But
Okay.
we're not just creating the table, although that is part of this, but we're also creating the system. So how
Okay.
would you
So
do you build this? What tools would you use to build a system? And then we can also tackle the table later.
okay, so we have API caller that we need to handle. It's formatting data in JSON. And we probably need to, we don't need to probably, we need to convert that JSON data into columnar format. But let's start, I'm thinking, and we want this to be live as well, right? At a given point in time, or range. So it's live API. So I'm thinking if we're going with Amazon system, we'd have a API handler, which would feed into a Lambda function, which would also feed into like Kinesis, and then into a Kinesis Firehose, which would get transformed at some point and then stuck into what would be either our AWS Redshift environment, or if we're using Snowflake, some kind of OLAP data system is what I'm thinking. How does that sound to you?
So that looks good. I think you're missing one thing though. Is this Kinesis to Redshift connection? Is that the best way to do it?
We're streaming this into Firehose. Well, actually, you know what? Sorry, I missed a step. We need to go into S3, and then from S3, transform it with some TypeScript or some glue job, I don't know. And then ultimately shoot it into Redshift. What do you think about that?
Okay, that looks a lot better. So let me ask you this then. How would you, so now we're in Redshift, right? So how would you, let me just throw you this other question right here. How would you store historical values?
Historical values. Well, when you mean historical, I mean, historical values would automatically be saved in the table as you build up over time, no?
Right, but would you put everything in the same table? Would you have separate tables for informations? So now, hint, hint, this becomes a data modeling question now because you already have the system. So now we're kind of taking it into the data modeling aspect of it.
You could definitely partition the data into different data sets, maybe like on Hadoop or PySpark or Spark, sorry.
What different data sets would you do?
Well, this is essentially sale data, right? So we're tracking unit sales of a portfolio on a given platform, which will derive from hourly batches of sales data delivered via API and JSON. So all this data is going to be time-stamped hourly. You could potentially group them in a daily partition or you could do an hourly partition, but that would be a lot of partitions if you did hourly. I'd say maybe go with a daily partition.
Okay. Daily partition. So why only daily?
Well, I'm worried if I mean you could break it down infinitely, right? You could say daily. You could go weekly. You could even batch the partitions weekly if you like. Even batch them monthly, right?
Mhm.
I guess it depends on the scope of what we really need, which really hasn't been decided here yet.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and that's a good, and I'm switching to Chris mode, and that's kind of a good way to phrase that, right? Because this was vague on
right.
purpose. And so one thing you can do that you can really never go wrong in is do the hourly like you described,
Mhm.
but then also create a separate table where you've already aggregated the daily. Because they're batching hourly sales data, and so that they may be doing that for a specific reason, right? They might want that, hourly view. Like
Right.
a company like Amazon wants a second to second view, right? But so there is a reason for it. Again, depending on what the interviewer says, you might want to go with that hourly. But then doing it daily, there's never anything wrong with that because for historical values, it will save a lot of compute for other teams that want to query daily tables.
Right. Because it'd be too hard to do hourly if you're looking at historical. That's a lot of hours, right?
Right, exactly. Like imagine doing 10 years worth of data,
Right.
um, and people having to query it over and over and over again. At that point, you might as well just create a daily view. And at Amazon, they also even have like a weekly view, a monthly view, etc. That way, you can just speed up the query themselves because they're already like pre-calculated.
Mhm. So when you said partitions before, you actually meant separate table entities that were labeled by a certain cadence, right? Daily, weekly, monthly.
Yeah,
So
and it's a good question because this question is kind of vague on purpose.
Mhm.
But like I said before, like if this was the system design aspect of it, this is actually the data modeling aspect of the question. And so this is, you might ask like, well, what do you mean by that? And then if the interviewer said like, hey, I'm talking about like once we're already in Redshift, like what do you do from there? At that point, it should kind of click to your head like, okay, we're talking about like schema designs and table designs at that point.
right. Okay.
So
So if I went to Lyft or if I went to some other company that did partitions, you guys could potentially have millions of tables broken down into hourly partitions
yeah,
or
I mean Amazon,
hundreds of thousands of daily, right?
yeah, daily, hourly, and sometimes even minute. Like for example, like I'll give you an example, like Amazon on Prime Day, it's a
Mhm.
really big deal because Prime Day is only live for like 24 hours. I think now it's like 48 hours, but it used to be only 24. And so if they're making like, $1 billion in sales, 24
Mhm.
hours, that means every single hour is worth, what's the math there? $40 million, right? They're doing
Mhm.
40 million of sales per hour, right? So if something breaks, they can't go a couple minutes, unnoticed because every minute is about $1 million. So if
Right.
something breaks, they need to know right away.
Okay.
And so there are
So
cases where like minute to minute and even
Mhm.
second to second or real time, to be honest, data is really, really essential.
So in the example right above this line, we have hourly to aggregated daily to weekly to monthly. So let's pretend we're just gonna save data for one day. So we have 24 hours. We're pulling it in sales data hourly. So we have 24 tables. Then we have some job that's gonna union all those 24 hourly tables and make a one daily table, right?
Well, it's not 24 tables, more it's like 24 files because the
Okay, so there's
24
24,
files are getting placed into S3 as raw data.
right?
And then you're doing the transformation here and inserting it into Redshift. But then the next hour, you're just inserting the next hour of data into Redshift as well.
So that PyScript glue job, would it inspect the metadata associated with that CSV and S3 for a timestamp, or would it go by like a naming convention that you can
Yeah,
iterate over?
good hour. Good question. It's probably a timestamp an hour. That way, it knows that it's not duplicating the data, but also, yeah, that's the layer where you would transform your data.
So yeah, there would probably be a custom Pi script involved in that glue job that would look at the metadata and then selectively choose certain CSVs,
Right.
union them, and
Like
then throw
once
it
you
into a table. Okay.
exactly once you do the insert statement into Redshift, you would say like, hey, do it based on a partition of day plus hour.
Interesting.
But let me, because we only have 3 minutes, so let me jump in because I want to ask you one more question. The question here is, what are the limitations of the database technology to make this challenging? Now, here's the thing. This question will always be here, but this question, the answer to this question obviously is different based on what you answered here. And so in your case, what are the limitations to Redshift?
Definitely expense-wise, storing data in Redshift is expensive. And that also comes with how much memory you're going to be using, right? Memory directly correlates to our expense at the end of the day.
What else?
Computationally wise, Redshift is good if we're going to be doing analytics, but if we're going to be pulling single transactions, it's probably not the best.
Yeah, no, I think you got the main reasons. This is like 90% of it, and frankly, this one right here is the most important one, the one you just said. You know, the crux of it is that, let's say you wanted to dashboard this into Tableau or something, right?
Right.
At a 1 hour batch, this is not a problem. You can run this job. Maybe it takes 5 minutes, so it loads every hour. In the example here for Amazon Prime, this is not good for Prime Day because it needs to get updated every 5 seconds. So it doesn't make sense to use Redshift here because the Redshift job here might take more than 5 minutes. And so this is not possible. And so if the requirement from the business changed and they're like, hey, instead of hourly batches, we're going to turn this into 5-second batches, all of a sudden Redshift is going to fail you. And so in that case, you might want to just go directly from S3 to some sort of dashboard. It's more expensive to query. Again, it depends on the use case and the business use case. This might be more expensive to query, but it might actually save the business a lot of money. For an example, like Prime Day, so that they can catch bugs really quickly.
So I don't know. This good for analytics transaction cost thing still kind of confuses me. Can we talk about that in our next meeting? More in depth on that?
Yep, that's perfect. Yeah. Let me know if you have any questions that you want to write up, and then we can talk about it in the next meeting with like more specific examples. But for the most part, I mean, you did this in like a second, so it really seems like you have the concepts down. So good job.
I just remember that from the project.
Amen. Awesome.
Do you have 30 minutes sometime this week again, just to discuss the Redshift trade-offs?
Yeah, let's aim for Friday. I think Friday should work.
Friday, 30 minutes? Okay, cool.
Yeah. Awesome.
I'll send you an email after this.
Perfect. Later, buddy.
Okay, thanks, Chris.